Okay, at this time, we'll go into our Operations Committee, Capital Report and Transportation Summary Report. Any questions?
Unless you require one. The data stays on its own unless you need a
Right.
presentation on it.
Afternoon.
Afternoon.
Kevin Mingo with Transportation. You have the report in front of you that kind of summarizes the end of year statistics, specifically driver count is your first topic. You can see that we finished with 342 drivers for the 355 bus routes that we had in Charleston County. Just to kind of give a comparison to last year, we finished last year with 387 drivers, and this year finished with 344. The driver shortage has been well publicized. At one point during the year, in March, we completed a supplemental contract with Coastal Bus Lines, where we had 7 bus routes that Durham couldn't staff. We had Coastal Bus Lines take over those routes. Overall, I would say comparing this year to the past year, the overall late lost instructional time is about the same, 11,556 hours in 2018, and then this year would be 11,390. The breakdown of each school is listed on the next 2 pages. Leads you into another bar graph that essentially gives you a different visual comparing 2017-18 versus 2018-19 in terms of lost instructional time broken down by month.
Okay.
The percentage there in the pie chart, which looks at the different factors and different causes for the lost educational time, you can see there. Again, lack of a driver, nearly 50% of the reason for lost instructional hours, traffic being the second most highest. When I look back and I compare it to the previous year, traffic had been the highest back in 2017-18, nearly 65% of the time, where lack of driver was only an issue 20% of the time. And then finally on the third page, that just kind of gives you the breakdown of the average number of drivers that Durham had month to month. You can see it trends down from the start of the school year all the way to the end of May with an average of 339 drivers in May, June. The green bar represents the number of drivers that Durham is contractually obligated to maintain at 110% of the number of routes that they operate in Charleston County.
So if I can add, Reverend Mack, just looking ahead to next year, which is obviously the most important thing that we're looking at right now, is Durham has a recruiting plan in place. We're expecting to meet with their leadership next week to see how well they're doing, as well as the transportation staff tracking those items to ensure that the driver count is up. And we have that supplemental contract in place for next year as well.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Chris?
Do we have any performance opportunities to either incentivize or penalize them for lack of drivers and or lack of doing the job?
So there are 2 things in place in the existing contract which we enforce. The first of which is withholding of a percentage of their payment when they do not meet the contract requirement. We are holding funds and have been holding funds since the beginning of last school year. Actually, we held some over from the previous year. We did release some at the beginning of the year when they got their driver count up. We picked it back up again, and then we do not pay them for a route they double up on. So if they swing back to the school and pick up a second route, they do not get paid for the second route.
So it's not
that they
just
missed.
retainage, we get to keep it.
We hold on to that resource, and it stays in the general operating fund.
But does it go to them once they go back?
No,
The
that
lost
does not.
route does not?
The withholding money would eventually at the end of the contract, but the missed routes do not go back to them, and that comes back into the general operating fund.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So I don't know how we ended up in a contract with Coastal Bus Line. I don't know if that was an RFP, a sole source, or whatever, but does that contract, is it comparable in the cost to Durham?
Yes.
It actually is.
Yes.
And can you expand it?
We can. once we know what Durham's capacity is at the beginning of the school year, like Mr. Roy said, we have a meeting with them next week. So for instance, we see that there's maybe 10 routes that aren't going to have a driver for them. We could go back to Coastal and see
So is
what.
your coastal contract an annual contract or a multi-year contract?
It was for the remainder of last year and will run through this year, so it'll line up with the next solicitation. And to just close on that comment, Kevin's exactly right. We're on track to see if we can add to those routes this year, but last year we maximized their capability. So we basically increased the number of routes to 7 based on their ability to provide drivers. So we maxed out that contract last year.
So it's pretty clear that Durham is going to start the school year without bus drivers, short of an absolute change of history. And it's pretty clear that we're going to struggle with the same issues that we have struggled with, which is a good mix of lack of drivers for that particular day or those routes. Traffic is certainly an issue and that. So are you saying that Coastal can't pick up more than 7 routes? I mean,
They couldn't last year.
we can almost guarantee we're going to need this supplemental this year. We certainly, in the last 5 years, we've needed it, so I don't see a seismic shift in how that it's going to change between now and August. So I would just say, why, can we find other bus lines? Can we go ahead and get proactive on that?
So I think the ad hoc committee has made a recommendation in reference to the proposal of 2 service providers, and that's what that RFP that Jeff is
Right, that's the
talking about.
RFP, and that has to come to the board because it's an ad hoc committee.
So, and also has been indicated, and we are being proactive as far as in preparation and making sure that we have drivers. Jeff just alluded that they have a meeting next week with the Durham officials as far as where we are with the number count so that we can be better prepared. And I think with Coastal, I think there may be some conversation that might be going on as far as, how much can they expand if the need exists.
I would love to have heard that in the answer to my question. Are we proactively reaching out to Coastal to see what they're able to do in August?
Well, again, we don't want to put the cart before the horse. We're meeting with Durham officials next week. Well, not the senior staff is. But we are having those conversations are being discussed.
So are these 2 contracts tied in that we can only use Coastal after we give Durham first bite of the apple, or can we expand the Coastal contract?
We can pull routes from Durham when they're not meeting the contract.
But that's the only way we can pull routes from Durham.
Correct.
In the
If they're
existing
me-
contract.
In the existing contract.
Right.
And so one point I will make is that the ad hoc committee did report out at the last board meeting, so on the 24th of June, we did report to the board the results of that committee. So that committee has closed at this point.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. You have, I'm sorry, Rep. Collins?
A couple of things I'd ask you about. Why does it decline? Why does the number of drivers decline from August to May? Why is that? Because why does the numbers of Durham drivers consistently go down as the year progresses?
You're asking about the routes or the drivers?
No, sir. Why do the number of drivers consistently decrease from August to May? Well, according to your chart, they start off with about 371 drivers and end up with, I guess, 330 or 40 or so. I guess 30 or so. Why does it constantly go down as a trend month after month?
Drivers quit. They just, they don't like working for the company. I mean, we've heard complaints about the culture of the company, so some drivers leave. Others are terminated because they have done something that's a significant number, I'd say probably greater than 10, where they've done something wrong, so they're terminated by Durham or at our request.
And I would add, the third element is that they, in some cases, find a better opportunity. The drivers leave for a better opportunity.
There are several bus companies that do pay more in terms of a starting wage than Durham.
And I was going to add as well, too, the economy is great.
Yeah.
So that drive pulls drivers away for better wages and better opportunities elsewhere.
But you hit on a key factor that I've heard over the years, that style of management, the management performance causes deterioration in the number of employees at Durham. This is what I've heard for about the past 6 years or so. And if that's not going to be fixed but by external means, that's got to be fixed within. And we made it to craft a contract that's going to include that there some type of retention, because if retention is a problem, and you have to go out and make another contract. The contract was an RFP, or how did the contract come into existence with the new company? How did that come about?
With Coastal?
Yes, Coastal.
That was an RFP as well. They were the only vendor that actually bid, so we put it out to anybody that was interested, and only Coastal Bus Lines.
So you advertised that and got one response?
Yes.
That seemed kind of strange that no one would respond. Is it because it was late in the school year? Is that why?
I really can't speak to why other companies didn't want to bid on it.
Mhm.
Maybe because it was small in terms of scope.
So lastly, so are you going to put out a new RFP for the entire contract, the bus service, for the upcoming school year? Are you looking to put out an entire new contract, new RFP?
For the next
School year.
contract?
Right, are we going to stick, in other words, are we going to stick with Durham, or are you going to solicit it, try to bring in more companies for the next school year?
No, not for the next school year, but the ad hoc committee is working on the contract for the period beyond the scope of this Durham contract.
So I don't think you have a solution. I don't think you have a solution
just
yet.
1 minute.
Is what I'm asking. I don't really see a solution at hand. If the numbers are steady increasing and you're steady going out to Coastal, it seems like you're still going to have a problem on hand. Maybe some of those same drivers are leaving Durham going to Coastal.
They are not.
They're not.
No, they're not. We monitor the drivers that they hire, and we make sure that the Durham drivers aren't leaving and just moving over there. There's a
All right.
requirement in the coastal contract.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Darby?
Sorry, I have a barking dog behind me. I just want to make sure everybody understands that at our last meeting, the ad hoc committee task force made a recommendation that for not next school year, but the following school year, that we bid out and have more than one. It could be 2, it could be 3 vendors to provide transportation help and provide transportation. And when we went through this ad hoc process, we had some very frank conversations with Durham about ways that they could get what our expectations were for this next school year. So I think staff is working on all of that pretty aggressively.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions? All right, thank you. Is there any questions in reference to the capital project report?
And no.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to give some fantastic news that we had received. Our April sales tax collections were over 1.1 million above our 2% cash flow projection.
Very good.
Fantastic collection.
Borrow less money.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions? None?